Hi, my name is Malcolm Clemens Young. I'm the Dean of Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, California, and welcome to the Forum, an online experience that we're very proud of at Grace Cathedral. Kristi Yamaguchi has had a long and successful career in professional figure skating. She's an Olympic Gold Medalist and two-time world champion figure skater, among many other honors. She hails from Fremont, a fourth-generation descendant of Japanese immigrants, whose family was sent to the internment camps during World War II. In fact, her mother was born there. In 1996, she founded the nonprofit organization Always Dream, whose mission is to ensure children from low-income families have access to high-quality books in the home environment and extensive family engagement and support. Each year, the Cathedral chooses a theme for inspiration and reflection, and in 2022, our theme is connection. Tonight, we'll be talking about sports, fostering reading as an integral part of children's lives, and about accepting differences in people, and how all these can help us to connect with others. Kristi, thank you so much for joining us. All day long, I've been just like had to kind of bounce in my step because I knew you were going to be here. And the last time we were together in person, your energy is so great in person. I'm just disappointed that we have to have you online.
Oh, I know. It's the way of the times, though, right? But thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be part of this. And it's great to be able to sit down and chat with you.
Yes, definitely. It's the 30th anniversary of your gold medal win in France. And I just remember that so clearly myself. And I wonder what some of your strongest memories of just that whole experience are now with the passage of time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's like a lifetime ago, really. And hard to believe because, there's certainly some vivid memories back from 1992. And, just the culmination of so many things happening that particular year. So, it was an honor of a lifetime to be there representing my country and, walking on eggshells, it seems like every day leading up to the Olympics. But, I was just really happy that the years of hard work and the focus, the dedication all turned out the way it did. So, every day thank my lucky stars and just appreciate what's come my way since then. And it's been a good ride.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure watching you on the ice. And I wonder if just behind the scenes, there was anything that kind of like you remember. I mean, one thing that I think of last time we were together, we had dinner together, and we were talking about just ice skating. And there's like a particular hill when I'm riding my bike to the cathedral, and there's so many times when I flash back to that conversation. I had no idea that conversation would last in any way in my memory like that. But were there things from the Olympics, like kind of behind the scenes, that you kind of remember?
I think just the entire experience, because, coming up as a figure skater, you attend many competitions and, and you're familiar with all of that. But the feeling at the Olympics is so much different because there are so many other athletes there. It's not just figure skating, and you are part of a small, tiny little part of this larger US contingent. So it just had a feeling so much bigger than just myself and figure skating. And, I was among so many of my idols at the time and other athletes who I just really looked up to: Bonnie Blair, Dan Jansen, a whole bunch of people. So, it's just being in awe. And at the same time, it's like, okay, I'm here too. So I got to focus on my job at hand as well and not get too caught up in everything. But, be everything from staying in the Olympic dorms. My roommate was Nancy Kerrigan, and we were very close friends through all of that. And, taking part in the opening ceremonies and marching in with all of the Team USA athletes was probably a rush I'd never experience again. So, those are some of the most vivid memories that I remember.
I love that. I'm glad that you said that. It's because, like, in a way, it's a ritual, that opening event. And, all we do at Grace Cathedral is make rituals all the time. And to try to, like, draw to a focus that sense of meaning, that's, we're all, as human beings, are ready to experience something kind of bigger than ourselves. And I love that idea of just being there with these athletes from around the world, all sorts of different athletes, and that sense of camaraderie and community that came into being. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how that might be different this year with COVID. I mean, it's probably going to affect a lot of what happens over in China this winter.
Yeah, it's hard to really imagine what it's going to be like. I know the athletes already are being super, super cautious because of the testing regimen that they're going to have to go. They are going through before they even leave for Beijing. And then while they're there, I think they're getting tested like once a week or something. So, having to be so diligent and worry about that adds just a huge layer onto some of the pressure and responsibilities that they already feel. So, I'm hoping once they're in that bubble that they keep saying they're going to be in, that they are safe, they feel safe, so that they can still have that, Olympic village experience where you're really part of something, and, making new friends and interacting with, the other countries and everything. That's what makes it so special. So yeah, hopefully they can still do that. We'll see.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. One of the things I think is just the most extraordinary thing about you is just your ability to withstand pressure. I mean, I just think of you as a two-time world champion. I mean, and I wonder if you have, I just, even preaching at Easter and Christmas. So, there's thousands of people at Grace Cathedral, and I definitely feel it. And it definitely brings something good out in me. And it definitely brings something like the nerves ahead of time out too. And I wonder what advice you have to people who are just going into stressful circumstances, or just how you handled the pressure. Like, do you have any tricks that can help us handle pressure too?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if everyone kind of has their own little magic formula that works. Preparation is key, right? I think that's one thing that you can rely on, and that will give you confidence to kind of get through any kind of pressure-filled situation is, if you've performed and put the time in and the preparation in to be ready for that moment. Because if you're ready for that moment, no matter how crazy nervous you feel, you can kind of keep telling yourself, I'm ready, I've prepared, like, just go out there and do it, whatever the situation is. So, and just leave it all out there. I always, holding back, I think, has never really gotten anyone what they really want. It might be the safe route, but it's, even if you have a little bit of success, will you be satisfied with it because you left something out there on the table? So, I think that's another thing I try to live by is like, really put 100% in and go for it, because, it's better to live without those regrets and what ifs, right?
Yeah. Well, I love that advice. The first piece of advice of imagining it ahead of time. I mean, that's what preaching is all about. It's just being able to imagine when people are sitting there in the pews or watching it on screen, imagine how they're going to respond to this story that you're about to tell. And also, it does help you prepare. And I do like that too, of just like not always trying to choose the risk-free path. And that must be so frightening to do some of those maneuvers and really try to do the difficult one and not just choose the safe thing that that you can do over and over again.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously when you have your competition right in front of you, like in skating, then you have no choice but to kind of go for it. So that there's an extra little nudge there in athletics, because obviously comparison is everything in that. So that kind of keeps you going
Right,
too.
right, exactly. So if you see somebody else's routine, then you know that it's going to mean you're going to have to be that much better in order to be able to succeed in that. And you're right, it is like it. I mean, it's so individual. You're the only one who's going to make it succeed or not succeed when you're out there on the ice. And yet, it's that comparison is just brutal too.
Yeah.
It's a uniquely pressure-filled setting. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about just the way that people throw the shot put has totally changed from the time when I threw the shot put. The way people do street skating, skateboarding, there's a kind of progression that happens in surfing and skating. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about just what kind of progression you see in the world of figure skating.
Yeah, quite a bit, especially in a short amount of time. Although it has been a long time since I competed, but one, the judging system and the way skating is scored went through a drastic change after 2002. So that really changed our sport and turned it a little bit more into a math game where, every single move you did on the ice accumulated points for you. And so, you had to have strategic choreography and content, in your program to make sure you get a certain amount of points. So, I think it improved a lot of things in our sport, just shining the light on the importance of like good spins as well as good jumps and interpretation to the music and, composition of your program of, what it looks like as a whole, not just like jump here, jump here, jump here. So all of that, I think overall brought the whole level of skating up, and then obviously with the points, it technically pushed our sport really fast. And like what the woman you'll see doing in Beijing in a couple of weeks competing, it's still mind blowing to me. The content that technically they've improved and are doing quadruple jumps, which is 4 revolutions in the air, and which is like pretty much on par with what the men are doing in competition. So it's pretty incredible, the leaps and bounds technically that the sport is taking in such a short time.
I remember one time being at Ho'okipa on Maui surfing, and I didn't even realize it. I just because one person would come out, another person would come out, another person would come out. And pretty soon I realized that I was surrounded by 6 professional women surfers. And what they were doing was just absolutely blowing my mind. I mean, it was incredible what they were capable of. And it was just, I just feel I'll never forget that surf session, to just be so near people who are just, who do such an extraordinary job. It's funny that decision about judging, which almost sounds like a way of making things more objective, just had these other implications to it. The way that it's changed, what people do, on the ice. That's absolutely fascinating. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about just, in the fall, we had Professor Harry Edwards. He's a sports sociologist who was really involved in the 1968 Olympic boycott, like the conversations about, whether to have a boycott. You remember the, Black Power symbol, from Tommy Smith, and that he was very involved in that. He pays attention to kind of Olympics and politics. I wonder if you just have kind of like a way of answering the questions that people have, just about, the politics in the Olympics now with this particular Winter Games, or just how politics and sports should be related to each other.
Yeah, always a tough one, right? It's hard because obviously I'm athlete and will always take the athlete's point of view. So, when you look at past boycotts, did they accomplish anything other than broken dreams? Probably not. So it's, it's a really tough situation because yes, I think there are certain responsibilities. The athletes these days are some prominent, names in the household, but again, they are Olympic athletes, right? And so it's, it really falls into the hands of the International Olympic Committee and their choices they make on awarding. I think the countries that will serve as hosts and making sure that it is safe, welcoming, and place, for to host this type of games where everything is about dropping your political, views and coming together as a world in the camaraderie of sport and sportsmanship, fair play, which are all the ideals of the Olympic oath. So, at one point, it's like, yes, you want the world to be able to put aside their differences and compete, in fair play. But at the same time, I know there's just some atrocious things happening. So, I'm not surprised the U.S. government is doing a diplomatic boycott. I think that makes more sense to me than the athletes boycotting. And, COVID, I think, took care of the economic boycott for everyone. So, unfortunately, there won't be fans there or very limited and selected fans. But, I think in the future, I'm hoping the International Olympic Committee really takes to heart and really pays more attention to where they're awarding the games and what makes sense for the climate of the world at that time.
Yeah, it's such an important point that committee really needs to have good judgment and make good decisions. What are you looking forward to in just the upcoming Winter Olympics, and what should we look forward to as we watch the events on television?
Oh, so much. I mean, it's exciting. The U.S. Olympic team is sending over a really strong contingent, and seeing some of the pre-Olympic competitions in all the sports, it seems like the U.S. has been showing really well. I know there's going to be some interesting things happening because none of the skiers have actually ever skied on the main mountain that they will be competing on. So, I heard one of the top skiers, Michaela Schifrin, who is, a favorite for gold in many events, dominating women's skiing right now, say, please give us some grace because we've never seen this mountain before in our lives. Just, videos of it, videos of certain turns, and she's like, there's one spot where they'll literally be in the air for about, I can't even remember what she, like almost like half a kilometer or something ridiculous. It was like flying basically. And she's like, if a gust of wind comes, just know that's not going to be good. So I think it'll be thrilling to watch. Obviously all the skiing, figure skating, of course, my favorite in the US there has some real top contenders. Nathan Chen in the men's figure skating has been dominating for the last 4 years since the last Olympics. He's only been beaten once. And the guy who beat him is also on the US Olympic team, Vincent Zhou. And so those two, I think, are huge contenders for medals next month. And then we have two Bay Area women on the women's figure skating team, Karen Chen, who's from Fremont, and then Alyssa Liu, who's from Richmond. And it'll be so exciting to watch the two of them pursue their dreams. Karen's a little bit more the veteran. It's her second Olympics. She has a little bit more to prove. I think she really, I think, is leading this U.S. team in. And then Alyssa Liu is our fresh-faced young skater who she's finally qualified age-wise to be old enough to go. She's only 15 still, but she is pushing the boundaries of the technical side of women's skating here in the U.S. So if anyone, she could hold up technically with some of the top Russian skaters that are favored to be on the podium.
Yeah, I'm so excited about it. I just can't wait. It's going to be wonderful. Can you talk a little bit just about like your own history? Like what made you, first gravitate towards skating just as a girl growing up in Fremont? What attracted you to the sport and how did you get involved in this?
Really, it was just seeing an ice show.
Yeah.
It was, I think, just a local show, or, I also remember going to like the ice follies and seeing Peggy Fleming performing, and just being enthralled and entranced with the performances and wanted to try it and begged my mom. She finally took me when I was about 6 years old. And from that very first time, just loved it and loved the feeling and kept asking to go back. And eventually she signed me up for like the group lessons at the local rink. So um, yeah, I was talking about this earlier today. It was just a feeling of freedom out there on the ice. Similar to skiing, you feel the speed, the wind, and a sense of freedom of movement. And in skating as well, you have freedom of expression too. There's a performance aspect to it. So, being a shy, kind of timid little girl, it gave me a place to, express myself, and where I had confidence to maybe play a character and, have an alter ego.
Yeah, just that feeling of rushing along, it is a wonderful feeling. I love that about different sports, like whether it's bike riding for me or for surfing or what have you. There's like a physical, like the way that you feel when your skates make contact with the ice, and that I find very, like, I love, just from
Mhm.
skating as a kid myself. What kind of who were some kind of important people who influenced you as you were kind of coming up, and what did you have to learn from them?
Yeah, quite a few people. I think early on, my very first coach that I worked with, her name was Anne. And, she was so good at really teaching strong basic skills. And, it really was the foundation to the quality of skating that I would build on later on. And so I trained with her, worked with her for the first few years that I started skating. And I think she taught me a lot of great qualities and some work ethic as well. Like I wouldn't say it was hard on me or anything, but she gave me a notebook, and I had to tally how many times I did the certain spin or the certain jump, and make sure that I practiced everything enough before I left that practice session. So as a young kid, I think that was a good way to learn. And then, my the coach I eventually switched to when I was 9 was the coach I went through the Olympics with.
Wow. Yeah.
And her name's Kristi Ness, from the Bay Area as well. And she, had huge impact on um, life lessons that I learned through skating, just perseverance and hard work, setting goals, and the preparation, getting ready for those big moments mentally, not just physically. So yeah, I think those were all incredible life lessons to learn early on that, you could apply anywhere.
Yeah, I keep thinking to myself, just like, I was thinking about this earlier today, just like, what advice do you have for people who are coaches or coaching? I mean, it could be coaching baseball, and it could also be, coaching somebody at work. But you've had coaches, and I imagine you've probably had a chance to influence people yourself. So what advice do you have for coaches?
Ooh, I don't know if I would have advice to coaches, but I think be as I don't know. I mean, I think there's just so many great approaches to take, and Christie's approach for me worked. Maybe it didn't work for everyone. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure what the magic formula would be, but obviously positive more than negative
Right. That's great advice.
helps.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you want to be honest, and Christy was very honest. When something wasn't good enough, she let you know. And that was good, but she didn't just tell me what I did wrong. She would also tell me then how to correct it. Right. And that's then putting the power back, onto the student. Be like, okay, no, you fell because of this,
Right.
but here's how to,
Yeah, you open up
adjust.
your shoulder like 2 seconds earlier, or then they'll open your chest, and it'll mean that you'll land on a stabler platform. Or yeah,
Right.
that's interesting to think too. Just so those two elements, it's just like positive reinforcement of the good things, and then also just helping somebody, not just saying you did it all wrong, but being able to
Yeah.
explain how to improve is so important.
Right. Yeah.
You were on the ice for so long, and I wonder what you kind of learned during the kind of the later years of your career. And I also wondered too, just if you have, physical ailments that are kind of related to skating. Um, I definitely, my body has marks from different sports that I did over the years, and I wonder what your how your body is.
Yes. Yeah. No, it sounds like you're really active for sure. Still active, keeping busy. Yes, definitely feeling it a lot more now. I think I was very fortunate to really get through my career fairly injury free. I mean, I think my worst injury was a sprained ankle, like torn ankle. Um, that I was young. I was probably 12 or 13, and it really affected me for the rest of my career. So I did constantly have to do physical therapy and tape it and manage it because it never really was the same. And then as a professional, I tweaked to the other ankle. So my ankles were probably the worst thing, but I think I was lucky, I didn't deal with back problems or knee problems that a lot of the other skaters dealt with. But my coach also taught me to listen to my body, right? As soon as something wasn't feeling right or was starting to hurt, she was very, proactive of, getting us to see a doctor, taking care of the issue so it doesn't fester and really become more of maybe, chronic type of thing. So, I think that as an athlete, that's important too. Is like, yes, you want to push yourself, you want to take you to the limits, but then also listen to it. Like when you've hit the wall or you've gone there, take it back, take care of your body, nurse the aches and pains, because then, you can move forward without making it
Yeah.
worse.
Oh yeah, exactly. So smart. I love that. And listen to your body. Maybe you could talk a little bit of. This is like such an abstract question. There just may not even be a good answer to this. But is there a way, do you think, that in which you see the world differently as a skater? I think sometimes I see the world differently as a surfer. Just when you were talking about the mountain, being a mountain that the skiers had never skied before. There's a way in which every wave is kind of unique, and there's a way in which it's different, and there's a way in which you just kind of have to adjust to whatever the circumstances that are coming up at you as you go, because everything's in motion so much. And so it does kind of affect the way I kind of move through life. And I wonder how being a figure skater kind of affects how you kind of go through life.
Yeah. I think, in ways of the sports that you just mentioned, you are like on the fly a lot and making adjustments and at the mercy of kind of the current conditions you're under.
Yes.
Whereas in skating, I feel like it's much more calculated and
Controlled. Yes.
planned out, controlled. Like we literally have, two programs to compete. And the first one is 2 minutes and 40 seconds, 8 required elements that everyone has to do. And they can be like variations of that element, but that's the short program, and you really need to, if you want to be a contender, you need to complete all 8 of those elements to put yourself in position in the placements to then do your free skate and then have a chance to medal. So it's very calculated, and I think you hope that the conditions are ideal and the same of what you've envisioned or have been practicing in, so that that consistency is everything, because you don't have 3 strikes in another try. It's one time for each element to be able to complete. So yeah, it's just really a little bit of a mind game, you know, in practice, it's like putting yourself in that competition in the moment, creating that nervousness. And then in competition, it's like, okay, I'm back at home. You know, I've done this before 100 times. So just try to make it feel the same. And, you know, and then hopefully you get that consistency of performing everything.
Yeah, I mean, that preparation too, just in the planning and the thought and the intelligence that it takes to be prepared for whatever life brings you, and so that you can handle those, just that intense pressure. You know, you're always so modest about everything, the way you go through life, and it definitely inspires me. I mean, if you can be modest, then I can be a lot better at being modest myself. But you really are. There's a way in which you're a pioneer. I mean, not just as a skater and as an athlete, but just as an Asian American skater. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about just what that was like, kind of coming up in the figure skating world, and just what your family history and racial identity kind of meant, how people responded to you. You know, what did that feel like as you were growing up?
Yeah, I think, um, growing up in California and particularly the Bay Area, I was lucky. It's a very diverse area. And, I can't say I was the only Asian American skating in the Bay Area at the time. There were other kids that looked like me and looked like my family, maybe a little different, but I think that helped maybe not feel like, oh, I'm so different or whatever. But obviously, as I progressed and gained ranks in the national level, realizing that there were very few other Asian Americans at that top national level, and one of the other skaters I looked up to, her name's Tiffany Chin. Excuse me, and she was the first Asian American US national champion. I want to say it was 1983 or 84, and was also a world bronze medalist. And she was also from California, Southern California. And I always looked up to her skating, just technically and artistically. I loved the way she skated, but also felt that connection because she was another Asian American skater, and seeing her be able to do it, it does, everyone says representation matters, and it absolutely does. I think it was just, I felt kinship, and it was just like, oh, I want to be kind of like Tiffany. And then, it's skating, because it's so international. You are seeing people
Right.
from all over the world and different backgrounds and races. So, I think I just really focused on, ability and just saying what I need to say on the ice, but I think looking back there, I wasn't skating thinking or having that pressure that, oh, no other Asian American
Right. I'm going to be the first Asian American gold medal winner in the Winter
in figure
Olympics.
skating. Yeah, you don't think about that
Yeah.
going in, and it's just like, oh, hopefully I can not fall down. And so, and then obviously hindsight looking back is just like, oh, well, I guess that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And, it's great because, I was able to reflect more and just really gain more appreciation and gratitude to the generations that came before me, because I know there was a lot of hardship and, that whole thing of, proving your Americanness and all that, they paved the way to really help me in the generation I lived in to, live that American dream.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder if you have, I mean, there's just in the same way that you were inspired by Tiffany Chen, I wonder if there's stories that you have of people who come to you and say, listen, Kristi, your style of skating, really inspired me. And watching you in the Olympics in 1992 is the reason why I wonder if you have any stories like that, or that are, as you hear back from people you've influenced too.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. I've heard like some things here and there, and then like I mentioned with Karen Chen, we're both from Fremont, hometown, so I mentored her, and but other than that, it's just
It's a reminder
hopefully.
to me to actually to tell people that because there are people like that in my life. I've got to tell them. I haven't told them. They don't know that they had this huge influence on how I preach every single Sunday. I didn't talk to them about that. So I'm going to, as a result of this conversation, I'm going to reach out to one of those formative influences that I've had.
Nice. That's great.
So your family's been in California forever. I wonder if you can talk. I mean, my best friend when I was in middle school, his mother and my mother were both from England, and his dad had been in the internment camps. It was Japanese American, and his dad was really never quite the same after. And I know it was like a cloud that just hung over their house. And I wonder if you can talk just a little bit about just what that experience was like for your family, or if there are family memories about it, or just did people just try to move on and not think about those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the thought for that generation that experienced the camp, was just to leave it behind, move forward, like not dredge up painful memories, right? But I think it was the generations after that wanted to know, like, what happened, what was it like what was your experience. And probably wasn't until I was a little older where we started asking more questions. My dad was young. He was only 5 when his family was interned. And he's just like, I don't know, I was just like, it was like being at camp somewhere away that was really dusty. And I just remember being in school with some of my other siblings because their classes weren't, broken up by grades. They were just all kind of in one class. And he's like, I remember my friend jumping off the railing and breaking my arm. So, but he does remember, his older siblings were teenagers. And he said, I know for them it was a lot different. Yeah. They were a little more bitter because they understood what they lost, and they understood that they were incarcerated. So it was, for them, it was a lot different experience than it was for my dad. And then on my mom's side, my grandmother was actually not interned because her husband was in service in Europe for the US. But when she found out she was pregnant with my mom, she felt safer to go into the camp, and obviously wanted to be with her family. Her parents were there. So went back into the camp, and that's where my mom was born. So, I think there's just like, double-edged thing where it's like, oh yeah, we just don't talk about it, but at the same time, it's like, it's something that needs to be talked about and should be, so that there could be some education and awareness brought out about how that happened, why it happened, and hopefully not having history repeat itself. So yeah, I think this younger generation is a lot more outspoken and are kind of being the voices now of those who had endured, that time.
Yeah, definitely. And you're so right about, I used to visit a woman who was in the 1906 earthquake, and she was like your dad. She's 5 years old and has great memories of camping in Golden Gate Park. And but then her, parents, the parents of those children who like lost their businesses, lost their homes, came back to find everything vandalized. That's one experience. Another experience is, a small number would come back to the town, and the town had saved the business or the house. And then there were people who, like you said, lost. Imagine just like being prepared to go to Long Beach High School and have a normal like high school experience, and that's completely taken away from you because you've been incarcerated for no reason. So you're right. It's like everyone's experience is going to be very different. Even the undertone is so dark and scary, but there are going to be positive things that are going to happen to people at those times too. Yeah, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about just like the kind of new, like the way we've been seeing anti-Asian violence lately, and just like from your experience, like where does that come from, and why is that continuing to be such a terrible ongoing problem in the United States?
Yeah, I don't know where it's coming from. Obviously, I think the whole COVID situation and, misplaced blame is fueling it. I don't know if it's the cause of every attack out there, but, it's just, unfortunate. And I think, it definitely one of those things where it's uncomfortable, but it needs to be talked about, and the awareness that it's happening, because the Asian American community needs help, to really be safe and to feel safe and to make change so that they are. So the more voices that can be heard, I think the better, because that's the only way that I think, the change, to help protect that community will happen.
Yeah, we have so many elders, friends who are afraid to go out in a way that they just weren't 2-3 years ago. And it just breaks my heart to think how much their lives are changed because of these acts of violence. So the acts of violence are terrible, but then just like the intimidation factor that it has on others is horrible too.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think, it obviously, being Asian American, started to hit really close to home when, my brother and sister and I started worrying about our parents, going out and, telling them, don't be by yourself, always be with someone. And, here's an alarm to carry with you so you can, make noise if something happens or whatever, and those are just things you just don't ever want to have to worry about. So yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's really different. I think you start to realize, how bad it is when, you're walking down the street. And I even experienced this, and, saying hi, or, just acknowledging the stranger and saying hello. But, at the same time, it's like, I found myself sometimes waiting to see what their reaction was when they realized I was Asian, if it was a friendly one versus a not friendly one. And so, that's just unfortunate, place to be
So
in.
much of what happens to us is kind of at a subconscious level. And so you're right. I mean, we're always kind of looking at everybody who passes us and, wondering if they're, what their response is to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Your husband is a different race than you are, and my wife's a different race than I am. I wonder if you have anything to say just about like what learned being in an interracial relationship too. One of the things I learned was when we first were married, there were things that we would do that would irritate the other person. It wasn't like we were doing it to them. It was just like where we came from, and we were just kind of acting that way. But I wonder what you've learned being in a relationship with somebody who's different from you.
Yes, no, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think there's two different cultures, right, coming together. And even though it's fourth generation, there's definitely, traces of mannerisms and just, certain things about the Japanese culture that I bring to the table. And, my husband's from Minnesota. He's mixed too, Irish, German, French, Canadian. So big family, so we brought different things. And I think we had so much in common, both being athletes and living in that professional athlete world, that we were really open to accepting, the differences that we brought in culturally. And, he had never had sushi before I met him. Now he's the first one to, say, oh, let's go get sushi. So, I mean, it's just, small little things, but, it's just having that open mind. And then obviously having kids is a whole nother level of that too, because then they're mixed race. And, it was really trying to find a way where they could honor and appreciate both sides of their heritage. And so, we've tried to do that in different ways. And I think we're lucky we live in the Bay Area, where we can take frequent trips to Japantown and San Francisco and whatnot. And obviously we get back to Minnesota to see his family a lot too. But it's finding a way to help them understand too that, they're lucky to be able to have two different cultures to really embrace.
Yeah, it's so true. My friend always tells me, he's like, the future is hapa, half one thing, half another thing. And I completely agree with him. I mean, we have these ideas of what race means now, and it's going to be so different. I mean, as intermarriage continues to accelerate in the future. I know this. This might not be an okay question to ask. Your husband Brett was a professional hockey player, an amazing hockey player, and for so long. I wonder if, just from your perspective, kind of outside looking in, do you know anything about the National Hockey League that like ordinary people would be surprised to know about? You may not even, you may just say no, and we'll just move on. But
yeah. So maybe I'm a huge hockey fan, and this was even before I met my husband and we started dating. But it's an interesting league. In some ways, it's really great. I think they are still probably one of the few professional leagues that's still holds on to a lot of old school tradition. And good or bad, whatever. But one of the things I think misconception of hockey is that, that fighting and it's so brutal and that's terrible. They shouldn't allow it. Da, 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 da. But hearing from my husband, I started to understand why they do allow it and why it exists in hockey. And it's really kind of, they rely a lot on the honor system, right? And if you're going to play recklessly and endanger a player, you're going to be held accountable for it. So in some reasons, it's a lot of their way of holding each other accountable. And if you go out of line, then you better be ready to accept the consequences of that. So it's their own policing, which maybe isn't always great, and you don't want it to ever get out of hand. But at the same time, I could see his or the rationale where it's like they feel like it keeps players more honest as far as playing fair and not taking cheap shots and things like that.
I'm going to always remember this. That was so helpful for me, because in surfing, there's the same thing. There's, guys will punch other guys out, and people will be like, how would that be? It's like, because if you act you can put someone in a very dangerous situation. And so there is this kind of, there's no referee out there to say, hey, listen, you got to go in, you've been surfing dangerously, but there's a self-appointed referee that will do that, in many lineups. And like I said, I'm not justifying it or saying that's the right way to approach it, but for somebody who just doesn't understand the culture, it's a little harder to understand. And I've always wondered about that aspect of hockey. I just didn't even know that, it's very helpful to have that explained. So when you were a child and you were growing up, what books and movies and music influenced just kind of your growth as a person? Because I know you've been so involved in just like the culture that young people experience now, and your charity is so involved in helping people of lower income backgrounds to be able to have as rich a cultural experience as possible. And I wonder if you can talk about your experience with culture, and then just talk about what it grew into as you've grown and developed.
Yes, no, I think one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about literacy is because, I was a huge reader as a kid growing up. I mean, I don't remember having a bookshelf of children's books and being read to every night like we encourage parents to do now. But I do remember, again, reading was another way to escape into another world and experience different things and connect with different characters. And that's the fascination that I had with reading. I mean, Charlotte's Web was one of my favorite books, and loved a lot of the different messages throughout that. But I also love pigs, so that helped.
Right, there's a perfect preparation for your future as an author.
Yeah. And I think books, it did expand my mind, and I felt that it was just key and is key for other young kids out there to have that experience, have that opportunity to see what's possible, see what's out in the world, and maybe experience things that they never would in their own life, but through reading you can. So that's what Always Dream is all about, is giving access to low-income families, like you said, to high quality books so they can experience literacy in a way that will be a catapult for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, it's an incredible gift to give a child, is the richness of that cultural experience. I think it was so wise of you to recognize the need for that and to put so much energy into that, because I think every person should be able to have that rich imagination and that rich input in terms of just what you can think of. And all the things we've been talking about have been about imagination, right? In order for you to deal with the stress of the competition, you had to be able to imagine yourself in that place ahead of time. And all the way through our conversation, that's been kind of the through line. One of the traditions that we have at the forum is we take questions from our guests. So if people have questions, please send them. One of the first question that came in was, how were you accepted as an Asian American professional skater, since the sport at that time was a white culture dominated sport? So you kind of answered that a little bit, but I don't know if you have more to add to that.
Yeah, I think I, felt like I had a lot to give in the sport of figure skating, and particularly in the professional world. And, was excited to kind of take on whatever challenges were in front of me, as long as I could compete and perform to many different audiences. So, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I think there were times when I paid tribute to my heritage to, bring that up to the surface of conversation, but otherwise I didn't find a way to let it hold me back, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. So here's another question. Clearly you have a passion for reading. I work on early literacy and am a mom of a novice level figure skater in a world of electronics. It's hard. Athletes use their phones all the time before competition, etc. How did, if it did, reading help you in any way as a skater? Interesting question.
Yeah, because we obviously didn't have phones back when I skated.
Right.
Yeah, and how did reading help? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I do remember reading a lot of autobiographies of other skaters and other athletes and their experiences. So, in that regard, I think learning about how they handled things was very helpful. And there are lots of books out there by athletes that I think are wonderful. So I don't know, and maybe in that way.
So here's another question. I don't know if you have time for this. The question is simple. Do you still skate?
Oh, I don't perform anymore. That's been about 5 years now since my last performance. But we'll do like local skating rinks outdoors during the holidays. So getting out there with my family and friends once in a while, but just to do a little twirl around, not much as far as jumping anymore.
It sure makes me excited. I can't wait to, all of us are going to be like hoping that we run into you next time we're on one of those outdoor skating rinks.
Yeah, maybe, you never know.
Exactly. Here's another question. What motivated you to start Always Dream? Like, was there a moment or a thing that happened that brought that into being?
Yeah, kind of a few things. One of the major things I think was my first experience working with another nonprofit, Make-A-Wish Foundation. And, right after the Olympics, I joined a tour, and that was the beneficiary of our tour. And it was hands-on. We worked with the families, we met with them, we skated with a lot of the kids, spent the day with them. And I think that opened up my eye to making a difference and changing, a frown or the challenge that a child's facing into something positive for a day or whatever it was that we had, the time we had with them. And that really made an impact. And it was powerful, and I wanted to do more. and love the Make-A-Wish. I still do, but I was like, okay, let's do something where we can help facilitate kids to go after their dreams. So that's how Always Dream was born. And we did a lot of different things for the first 15 years. And like you said, the last 10 years, we've really focused in on early literacy, and knowing that is a great place to start, the foundation of dreams.
Yeah, definitely. It reminds me a little bit of your first teacher, like working on the foundation. If you can give people good educational foundation, it'll have the same effect too. I can imagine them going back to that too. Here's another question. There's so much polarization we see in our society and these days, and you're such a public figure. And I wonder, if you have anything to say about what to do about polarization, or if it's just, something that you've noticed, or I don't even know exactly what my question is, except what do you think we need to in order to bring Americans together again?
Oh, wow. I mean, that's a huge one to tackle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've all felt it, right?
Yeah, when you're preaching, it's so tempting to just, because it's just so easy to roll up your sleeves and just say, the thing that you read in whatever news outlet you get or heard, it's very easy to just step into it and not have a very measured response to, what's going on in the world,
Yeah, and it's within families too. It's just everywhere, and it's hard. So, I think this pandemic hasn't helped at all. If anything, it's just created more division because we're so isolated from each other. And, my husband and I were talking about, we're just hoping that once things open up, once people can be in person together again, you have a little bit more connection to have a conversation versus in 2 dimension or just typing words or whatever. So, I don't know what the magic bullet is. Hopefully our leaders do, but it's, I think just being open and listening and having a little more compassion, and, we're all different. We all think different things, but that doesn't make one person right and one person wrong. It's okay to disagree sometimes. And that doesn't mean you can hate each other. It's just, that's what makes America great, is that we have freedom of, choice and things like that. So, I don't know what it is, but I'm really hoping that kindness and compassion and understanding can come into our, society a little bit more, to breed more, I don't know, harmony versus, what we're seeing now, that division.
Yeah, I think you're so right about listening. And I think you're right that being in person again is going to help us a lot on a lot of these things. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about what you learned during COVID.
What I learned, that's a broad question.
Yeah, plenty of opening.
Like many things. I mean, obviously I learned, or didn't learn, it just that I'm okay being home.
That's good. Yeah, right.
I am more of a kind of homebody, whatever, and I'm okay with that. But there are things where I'm like, oh, I can't wait to get back out and do this or see, people again, without masks on. I learned that I'm a better cook than I ever gave myself credit for.
That's cool too.
Because I was always afraid of it, and didn't expand my culinary skills really until we were stuck at home. So that was a good and bad, not good for the waistline, but good in a way that my family can eat more than just grilled chicken.
Yeah, new skills. I love that. I learned to bake bread and make kombucha.
Nice.
And I'm like the worst cook in the world. What signs of hope do you see now? It's kind of like my last question. What around you, as you look around the world and look around what your experience is, what signs of hope do you see for the future?
I think the signs of hope I see is, the voices of this new generation, the millennials and the Gen Zs. I think they're not afraid to use it, And I think they are the ones who are really going to demand change, whether where it takes place, changing, the climate and change, bringing about change, which is going to help the world. So, I'm taking inspiration from them, and, obviously hope is always right in that younger generation to do what's good and right and everything.
Oh, well, thanks so much for being here tonight, Kristi. I was just looking forward to this so much today, and your energy in person is just like so infectious and so encouraging, and you're great here too. And there's so many ways in which you helped us to see things more clearly, and it was very thoughtful. I can imagine just with the Olympics coming up, you must have a zillion people who are asking you for different things. And it was very kind of you to make time for us tonight. I know that you've given us a lot of food for thought for the future. And I know that I'm going to see the Olympics in a really different way as a result of our conversation.
Oh, well, thank you, Malcolm. And likewise, I think the energy that you bring is incredible, and I think pulls it out of everyone. So, it's an honor to be on this forum and part of it. And too bad I can't see all of you out there, but appreciate you joining us tonight.
Yeah, it'll be really good. We'll get together and do something in person in another time in the future. It'll be good. All right. Well, please join me next week when my guest will be Bob Inglis, former member of Congress and climate change activist. We'll be talking about bringing the right and left in the United States together and leading the world to solutions on climate change. We rely on your support for the forum. Gifts of any size can make a difference. You can give on gracecathedral.org or by texting THINK, THINK, to 76278. THINK to 76278. And again, thanks so much, Kristi Yamaguchi. We're so blessed by you, and we'll look forward to seeing what you're up to in the future.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.